Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week beginning the 8th of December. I'm going to share with you some of the big stories of the week, then on screen the adventure on Monday, which always provides an influential backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through each of those influences in detail to give a clear picture of what we can collectively expect. Please stay with me. I'll then go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. As we go into this new week, the water energy that's coming from the moon initially in Cancer on Monday, but linking to Jupiter, Mercury, but also Saturn and Neptune is very powerful, suggesting we do need to stay in touch with our instincts. But Neptune, the planet which is very much to do with dreams, but can also be to do with illusions, ends a retrograde on Wednesday that began 5 months ago on the 4th of July. If we have been finding our physical vitality has been lower during that period of time, it's not a surprise. Of course, Neptune is an aquatic influence. It's very subtle, but also very potent. But back now, as it is in Pisces, it can be to do with distortion. So we get an opportunity through to the 26th of January as it completes its 165-year cycle to get much more in touch with our instincts, particularly around things that maybe have been pushed to one side that we don't really want to look at. But intriguingly, as this week goes on, the storming Norman of the chart, Mars, is coming into a very tense right angle with Saturn, but then culminates in a right angle to Neptune too. And that crunching energy between Mars and Saturn is one we do need to be mindful of. So I'm going to unpack that in detail for you. If we think about it, Mars in Sagittarius is very much about freedom, independence, and living very much in the moment. Doesn't like any kind of restriction. Saturn can be very restraining, and in that 12th house, it may be things that we're not aware of, things out of sight, more psychological things, our own inner blockages, which could have a role. But we're also going to see Mercury return to Sagittarius. If you recall, Mercury first made its way into Sagittarius on the 29th of October, but inverted back into the sign of Scorpio in its retrograde on the 19th of November. But it's back into the sign of Sagittarius and forges a very helpful link to Pluto, but not before being face to face all through the start of the week with Uranus, the planet which is very much to do with restlessness but also rebellion. There could be some tense conversations over finances and sudden changes of plan before Mercury moves back into Sagittarius, so I'll go into that in detail as well. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. You can see on the screen now that Jupiter and the Moon are together. And because Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer and the Moon is at home in Cancer, where it's domiciled, that's a lovely combination. Of course, it's relatively fleeting. In fact, later on Monday, the Moon is going to go face to face with Pluto in Aquarius, which could bring some kind of power dimension sharply into focus, where one person seems to want to get their way, come what may. But initially, and this influence will prevail through the back of this week, you can see that Jupiter and Mercury are in a delicious link, along with the Moon, but they're also angling back to Saturn in a lovely way. And as Jupiter moves on through the day, it's joining up exactly with the Moon and linking to Neptune. So being in touch with those more watery energies is very important. But we shouldn't forget that Mercury is very much about how we think. And in its angle to Saturn, if we organise things in a very structured way, that can be very good. But what Jupiter and the Moon are saying is also have a generosity of spirit and an optimism about what this week can bring. But just be conscious that also at the start of this week of the position of Mars. So Mars and Jupiter are in a quincunx. And you can see that Mars is only 1 degree away from that square to Saturn, which will intensify as this week goes on. So Mars, conversely from the watery energy of that grand trine, is in the fire sign of Sagittarius. It doesn't like to be constrained in any way, shape or form. And we could encounter someone who maybe wants to live very much in that more independent and freedom-loving mode, or we may want to break free of something that doesn't feel right any longer. So that could be one of the big themes of this week. But as ever, we need to be conscious of the role of the Sun. It's now in Decan 2, which of course is sub-ruled by Mars. That brings more thrust to the equation. And also, as we go further into the week, we are going to see a quarter moon between the Sun and the Moon on Thursday, and that's in the precise Virgo. Just be aware when we have a Virgo Sagittarius quarter moon, one of the things that we can do is actually try to do too much because of the virtuousness of Virgo and the energy of Sagittarius. The other thing to be cautious of is promising more than we can realistically deliver. But if a situation is really cramping our style, perhaps it's daunting conversations about who we need to spend Christmas with, that kind of do challenge that part of us that likes to do our own thing. But if we are seriously not enjoying perhaps a job, a relationship, a group of people that we've been hanging around with, Mars is really encouraging us right throughout this week to think about what we might do to step outside of that and reclaim that need to do our own thing. But the opposition between Mercury and Uranus is intriguing because Uranus is in Taurus, everyday money, and of course can be about innovation. Mercury is in the part of the chart and Soul Friday that's to do with shared resources. So there could be some intense discussions or changes of plan around financial matters, contractual situations. And again, if something's not working, there can be a sudden situation where someone asserts their right to do what they want, or we assert our right to separate from them. So some very powerful influences are playing out this week, but if you are connected to people and have plans that feel very intuitive and settled and meaningful, I feel that Neptune going forwards will be very helpful. And if there isn't a particular need to do anything more vigorous and adventurous, apart from perhaps heading off for some winter sun or snow, or getting out for an occasional stretching or exercise session with Mars in Sagittarius, things could go pretty well this week. So it just depends on the exact situation. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. Aries, your week beginning the 8th of December, we need to look at Neptune going forwards in Pisces, because if we go to the end of March through to the 3rd week of October, Neptune nibbled into your zodiac sign. And your zodiac sign is very much about freshness, new beginnings, energy, and Neptune can bring nuance and subtlety. But the chances are, once Saturn joined up with Neptune at the end of May through to the start of September, your personal vitality may have been challenged at times, or you could have found yourself being compelled to look at issues from your past. Neptune going direct on Wednesday is going to ease that, and by the 26th of January, you're going to see Neptune rejoin your sign and begin a new journey which lasts about 164.5 years. However, if you have found generally since 2012 that you have felt more sensitive at times, if you've embraced healing, spirituality, things like astrology or personal development in a much more meaningful way, it probably has been a growth spurt for you, but not one without some potential challenges, because the 12th house can be about what we can't see, and it can also be, in traditional astrology, hidden enemies. And because Neptune can be about distortion and deceit, if you have experienced some big disappointments over those years, it wouldn't be a surprise. Now, some people would say, well, that's life. We all experience disappointments. But I think you know that Neptune is a very acute energy, very subtle but very powerful. But what you are doing with Neptune going direct and forging such a splendid alliance in the early part of this week with Mercury, the communicator, but also Jupiter, the optimist, is helping you to dive deep into your inner resources as you evolve into this final phase. And when Saturn returns along with Neptune early next year to your sign, it is a new beginning for you. We're also going to see next year a stunning solar eclipse in August in your fellow fire sign of Leo, which is going to supercharge your energy along with Jupiter returning to Leo at the end of June. So you've got a lot to look forwards to next year in terms of freshness, new opportunities and possibilities. So if you do feel this week you're still clearing up some loose ends or trying to make sense of something that did disappoint you or someone, not a complete surprise. But there's another part of you at the moment, because of the Sagittarius season that we're in, which is going to be complemented by Mercury from Friday. There's another part of you that's up for a change, and we all know that change can be as good as a rest. But what you might encounter this week is that if your physical vitality is not quite up to going out and joining in with the festivities or heading off for some kind of excursion or break, you could beat yourself up a little bit about that. And I want you not to do that, because if you had the available energy, the collective in Sagittarius would most certainly give you a sense of drama, excitement and adventure. And if you're feeling it in good fettle, the chances are you'll seize the moment to do something more spontaneously as this week goes on. But there may be a financial matter that does need discussing. There may be a surprise, it could be a beneficial offer, or there could be a sudden expense because of Mercury's electric opposition to Uranus. But your ability to think outside the box and be fresh in your approach is one of your great talents. But the other thing I love about Aries people is you can live in the moment. So if something feels right, you'll go for it immediately. And that's something you could do as this week goes on. Now, as Mercury escapes the opposition with Uranus, it moves into a much more compelling and constructive link to Pluto. If you're forging alliances with people, friendships, networks, which really feel good, maybe it is to get away with a bunch of friends that you really feel comfortable and enjoy time with, then the link between Mercury and Pluto can see some very powerful and profound conversations towards the end of this week. But just know, if your energy isn't quite as revved up as you would like, it's just part of a process, and once Mars, followed by the Sun and then Venus, escape the right angle with Saturn and Neptune as December goes on, that will give you an opportunity to move forwards in a much more grounded and structured way. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. Taurus, your week beginning the 8th of December can see a very positive conversation kick this week off, which gives you a real sense of buoyancy. But there may be a delicate issue that needs to be discussed, and you could have a brainwave about how to go about it, as the electric opposition between Uranus in your zodiac sign and Mercury in the part of your chart to do with your connections to others can help you be very nimble and perhaps present a plan to someone in a way which they will feel is very exciting and perhaps hard to resist. But you still have the the collective for you in the 8th house, which is very much about transformation. If you're loved up and it's going well, the intensity between you and yours can be increased, and so can the intimacy. But what about around your friendships? Because this is the time of the year when we are spending more time with people, and Neptune, the planet of illusion, ends a retrograde in that part of your chart. If you have experienced some disappointments in recent years, and some people haven't met your expectation, that may have been quite challenging, but I feel that what you can gain from Neptune going forwards, even though it is challenged by Mars as the week goes on, I think you're much more aware of what your boundaries are and what you will or won't accept. So if there is someone who's demanding more from you than they're prepared to give you, I feel that Mars' square to Saturn can just give you the robustness to push back on that. Now there is a quarter moon on Thursday in your sister Earth sign of Virgo, which is in the most playful part of your situation. But again, if someone is a little bit of a killjoy around the Christmas arrangements, isn't getting into the spirit of it, trying to condition what you're doing, I feel that energy between Mercury and Uranus will see you speak out in a very direct way. But the resistance that's forged by Saturn could also be about your long-term plan. If you're not quite sure about that, or finance is an issue, that may be something that you do need to work on right through to Christmas Eve. Not just because of Saturn square to Mars, but also because the Sun and Venus, your ruler, following that. So if you're still trying to evolve exactly where you're going, for example, if you've got a brilliant business idea or you want to work collaboratively with someone else, there may be something that's not quite falling into place as quickly as you would like. But just know, as we reach Christmas Eve and the gap between Christmas and the end of the year is really going to see a much brighter set of influences come in, which really can liberate you to go forwards into 2026 in very buoyant form. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Gemini, your week beginning the 8th of December forecast makes me think that in astrology there are always competing influences. They're not all synergized, and the art of the astrologer is to present a picture of which influences will be the most potent. And I feel that relationships have been strongly to the fore of late, but because Mercury, your ruler, is rejoining that part of your chart on Friday, something that may have been stuck could be opened up and dialogue could be resumed. But if you have been feeling frustrated, or you are frustrated this week, it wouldn't be a surprise, because Mars is going to clash with Saturn, the planet of resistance. And Mars is in a hurry in the part of your chart to do with relationships, and Saturn's in the part of your chart to do with bosses, people in positions of influence. So if you're trying to get an opportunity to seek a new role, talk to your line manager, negotiate your package for the coming year, things may have been going slow, which really could be quite testing. And of course Neptune, the planet of dreams, although it's going direct on Wednesday, has been retracing its steps in your sector of worldly interaction since the end of October. But I feel that once Mercury returns to Sagittarius and escapes a restless, tense, irritable opposition with Uranus, which could create a very brittle atmosphere and see you a bit stressed out and exasperated, once it returns back into Sagittarius, it forges a very compelling link to Pluto. And something that has felt elusive could be clarified. It could fall into place. But the thing that I feel this week makes me think of, that if you try to hurry the process, it probably won't work. You'll just end up with a bit of a headache and feeling that much more frustrated that it's not going as you want. So just throttle down a little bit, just work on the processes, do one thing at a time that you can influence, particularly if you're waiting to speak to someone, and know that as far as your financial situation is concerned, there could be a breakthrough this week, and that actually could really delight you. But if you want it to happen at the speed of light, that's where the tensions can really creep in. There is also the potential for some strains in a personal relationship, and part of the reason for that may be that there's a shift going on in terms of who wants to perhaps be a little bit more assertive in that tie. It may be you, it may be your partner, and as ever, that tends to ebb and flow in most relationships. So just be philosophical if that is the case. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Cancer, your week beginning the 8th of December sees the moon in your zodiac sign merging with Jupiter as you enter the new week, which can put a spring in your step, particularly as they're combining superbly with Mercury, but also Saturn and Neptune, also in water signs too. So your instincts, particularly about expressing your unique individual talent and flair, can be heightened. What's not to like? But it's just the cluster of energy in Sagittarius is making you very mindful of the practical demands you have, the everyday responsibilities, perhaps the domestic chores, juggling your work against another part of your nature that may want to embrace your soul energy, your dream. Because Neptune, the planet which is very much linked to inspiration, has been in retrograde in that part of your chart since towards the end of October. And it goes direct on Wednesday, which is really good, but it is challenged by Mars later in the week, and Saturn, like Neptune, is challenged by Mars in this week too. So if you are feeling a bit loaded down by those workaday demands, by the detail of things perhaps, and it is pulverizing your passion, the opposition between Uranus and Mercury, which lights up the early part of this week, could give you the confidence to actually do something really bold and really different to liberate yourself from a situation that you're just no longer enjoying. So whilst it is virtuous to work hard, to be industrious, to put the application in, and if you're doing all that, then that's fantastic. And if you're really enjoying what you're doing, then that's great. But if you're not, if it's not enabling you to follow a dream, a big hope, this week could see you rethinking, and you may actually want to set yourself free from something which is just no longer giving you a sense of completion and joy. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Leo, your week beginning the 8th of December suggests as you come into this week, you may have been doing some deep thinking, and that deep thinking might have been around your roots, your family situation. It could be around your own emotional history and life story that you've been thinking carefully about, and that may have been somewhat of a theme since the 19th of November, when Mercury, the planet which is very much to do with how we process information, returned back into a sheltered, much more nurturing part of your chart, but not a particularly outgoing and chatty one. And yet you also have at the moment the Sagittarius posse of Venus, very glamorous, the Sun, very vigorous, and Mars, very dynamic in your sister fire sign of Sagittarius, pushing you to be more socially interactive and dynamic. Now Mercury is going to return to join them on Friday, which will give you a greater appetite for getting into the festive spirit. But because of Neptune going direct and of Saturn and Mars clashing early in the week, and then Mars clashing with Neptune, even if you do want to go out and be bubbly, get together with people, join in that social world, more than ordinarily, I think you can be aware of how you connect to others. So it's not just about having fun, it needs to be meaningful fun for you. And if you're not quite feeling it, there's part of you that might be a little bit less sure about how much you want to let your proverbial hair down. But as I say, by the end of this week, I feel you will be able to make much more sense of it. But the quarter moon does suggest on Thursday, if you are thinking about splashing out on a gift for someone you're very fond of, and you have set yourself quite a firm Christmas budget, it's just reminding you of not to try too hard, particularly if it's someone new that you're getting to know. Let the relationship develop at its own pace, that quarter moon saying. There could also be someone around you that's asking for some kind of financial support. If it's something that's turning into a bit of a repetitive pattern, this may be an opportunity to remind them that you're not their bank. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Virgo, your week beginning the 8th of December suggests that if you have been finding someone in turn elusive or cool, or rather resistant to your charms or affections over the last few months, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But if you have been building up a sense of frustration about that, that could come out quite powerfully at the heart of this week as your ruler Mercury goes face to face with the electric energies of Uranus. But Uranus is the planet of truth, and in the 9th house, higher truths. And Mercury in the 3rd house can make you very restless. So even if you're someone who will go out of your way to avoid a direct conflict, I think if you feel you really have tried your hardest to lean into their position, the fact that Neptune goes forwards, Saturn's gone forwards too, and they're both being challenged by the robust and rugged energy of Mars, which could make you a little bit more prickly and defensive, but also a bit more easily frustrated if someone is playing any kind of games. I feel that you may therefore feel you just have to deliver the message in a very direct way. But that's not necessarily a bad thing if the message gets through. But then later in the week, Mercury returns to the more sheltered 4th house of your chart, but does forge a very strong link to Pluto. If you are thinking about making some changes to your work or your home life or your domestic situation, a conversation you had towards the end of this week can give you some brilliant ideas. However, I must say, if a relationship situation has been going very well, even if things have been going a little slower than you would like, try not to get too frustrated, because I feel that having Neptune and Saturn going forwards is definitely for the best. And you know, you have been going through some lunar eclipses and one solar eclipse going across the sectors of your chart between your individuality and your connections with others. And those have been very potent over the last year and a quarter. So that's part of the backdrop energy that you're dealing with. But if you do need to really say it as it is in an unvarnished truth way, I think this could be the week you decide to do it. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. Your week beginning the 8th of December starts very brightly with a combination of Jupiter and the Moon right at the top of your chart early on Monday, forging a fab link to Mercury, Saturn and also Neptune. And that could help you to strategize your approach when it comes to a job or a financial situation. But there's also a sense of edginess at the heart of this week, as Mercury in Scorpio is face to face with the planet of innovation, Uranus, but Uranus can be a very restless, electric vibe. And if you're wanting to make progress around a deal or a business idea you've got and it's not quite moving forward as quickly as you would like, the exasperation could be palpable. And part of that is that the collective in Sagittarius, which will be rejoined by Mercury on Friday, is certainly giving you that platform to use your charm, Venus, your energy, the Sun, but your desire, Mars, in a very fast moving way. It's just, despite Neptune going direct on Wednesday, Saturn and Neptune are actually going to do all they can to block off Saturn's desires this week, which could mean that things go much slower than you would like, and that can be very enervating, and that can also cause a lot of frustration as well. And therefore, whereas you could come into this week with that sense of optimism, you could soon feel really up against it and wondering how you're going to get a breakthrough. But just know, from Friday, as Mercury returns to Sagittarius but links very well to Pluto, you may find a way forwards, and the logjam may not be completely cleared, but you could find a way around it. But it's just understanding the players, because Mars can be very impatient. The third house can make us want to physically move around more. It can see us want to say how we feel. It can be very much to do with conviction, points of view, the third house, whereas Saturn is in the part of your chart to do with your physical body and also your life organisation and your obligations. And if you feel that the brilliant ideas that you're developing or the excitement and enthusiasm you have is not being met in that way, and someone's just reminding you of those everyday mundane chores that you need to attend to, that can be exasperating too. So the best way to deal with this week really is to give yourself an achievable plan. Keep your expectations a little bit lower, pace yourself in terms of your energy, chip away the tasks that you can make progress with, and that move of Mercury will see things speed up just as the week draws to a close. But if generally your physical vitality has felt very low since around about September time through to now, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. And going from that to flat out, all out, revved up energy is quite a hard thing to achieve. So a graduated effort is what's required this week. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Scorpio, your week beginning the 8th of December sees Neptune, the planet of dreams and imagination, go direct in the part of your chart to do with being playful, socially interactive, your love life, but also if you're someone who enjoys a flutter, so anything to do with risk and speculation. But Saturn and Neptune have been in that part of your chart broadly together over the last couple of years and haven't made it easy if you wanted to be more dynamic. But the key at the very start of this week is that your ruler Mars is linking to the planet of speculation and optimism, Jupiter, in a clashing way, but is also in a tense right angle with Saturn. So despite Neptune going forwards, if you just want to get on the front foot and be more daring and go for it in a very quick way, you could come up against some celestial roadblocks. So in other words, if you are considering doing something to do with an investment, perhaps to do with buying stocks and shares, or being just a bit more on the front foot about how you might add to your income, don't be too hasty in your approach, because with Mercury in your sign in an opposition to Uranus, there is a sense that you want to do something quickly. You may feel electrified with excitement around an idea that's different. It could even be that you're really excited by someone you've encountered romantically, because the fifth house where Saturn, Neptune and the North Node are can be very much to do with romance. But of course, Saturn can be about limitation and Neptune can be about deception and distortion. And just because they're going direct doesn't change those characteristics. And Mars, because it is in the second house of your chart, is about desire, and it's about wanting things now. And because Venus is there as well, Venus and Mars in your second house means that whether it's deciding on what you want to splash out on the Christmas budget, or how generous you want to be towards someone that you're attracted to, or it is to do with trying to build your resources up by doing something daring, I just would be a little more risk averse, because the energy of Mercury in your sign could overstimulate you to such a degree in its opposition to Uranus. The desire to do something quickly might be actually counterproductive to you. Now later in the week, Mercury moves out of your sign back into Sagittarius and actually forges a really strong link with your modern ruler of Pluto. There could be a conversation around your home, a family member, could be around a property matter, and actually some information that you glean can guide your moves in a very constructive way as the cosmic curtain comes down on this week. But if there is someone that pops up on your radar that you find very enchanting, very charismatic, or there is that opportunity, perhaps someone tells you about a potential side hustle that sounds really intriguing, or you just want to go out and be much more social, the chances are with Mars, Venus, the Sun, and then Mercury at the end of the week, you won't want to hold back from diving in wholeheartedly, but actually Saturn and Neptune suggest do hold back. Don't go for it completely, because actually what you're drawn towards may be a little more illusory or have some catches that are not immediately obvious. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. Sagittarius, your week beginning the 8th of December is going to see Mercury, the planet of communication, of conversation, of inquisitiveness, move back into your sign on Friday, but not before it's in a very intense, almost hypertense opposition with Uranus, which could have an impact on your nervous system. You may find it more difficult to sleep early in the week, to switch off, but it also can provide some inspiration. But the collective in Sagittarius, which will be joined by Mercury, is also about actualizing your individuality. But with Neptune going direct on Wednesday, in the part of your chart to do with your home and emotional life, where Saturn of course has been in retrograde also recently, that part of your situation has been a big area of activity over the last 2 years in particular. And it may have been that some difficult lessons have been learned. There may have been issues to do with property maintenance, maybe to do with leases or mortgages that have proved problematic, or things have gone slower than you would like, or there have been some burdens. But there's part of you this week with Mars in thrust in action in your sign that just wants to drive forwards and overcome any challenges and obstacles you may have encountered. But actually, do you know, this is probably a week when you'd be better just throttle back a little bit, because if you try to make it work quicker than it's actually going to occur, it would just create a profound amount of frustration. There's actually a very strong set of influences at the start of this week, but in a very psychological way. Dive deep into your inner resources. Although you are someone who likes to take the initiative and can be, I don't mean this unkindly, impatient. I have Mars in Sagittarius. We want to make things happen urgently, and that's a great quality to have. But because Saturn and Neptune are going to square off to Mars, by trying to rush anything, it could just create a resistance, and that can actually then cause headaches, literal headaches, and irritation. So wait until Mercury arrives back in your sign, because then it forges a very compelling link to Pluto. A conversation that you have towards the end of this week can actually be very helpful. Also your thinking, whereas there may have been a lot of frustration and not quite seeing how you can steer around a problem, you'll be able to do so with aplomb as this week draws to a close. But just brace yourself, because really through to Christmas Eve, after Mars is square to Saturn, the Sun will square, then Venus will square, and they're all going to square off to Neptune as well. So that home and emotional sector, which has held the big lessons in recent years, is still in a way asking you to think first about being protective, nurturing, maybe safety first, and that more go-get inside of your nature, which is a fabulous part of every archer. Just not deny it, but soften it a little bit. Apply that sense of energy and thrust and dynamism to the right situation, because if there is anything to do with family, politics, Christmas arrangements, or that property matter which isn't falling into place, if you do try to make it happen beyond the time it's ready to happen, it just is going to be very exasperating. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Capricorn, your week beginning the 8th of December suggests there could be some last minute changes of plan when it comes to meetups this week, whether it's romantically, socially with friends. Things can be a little fluid, and that could be a bit frustrating, but also be aware that the energy of Neptune, which can be very lovely when it's boosting our imagination and gives us some very vivid ideas artistically, that's been in a retrograde in part of your chart to do with everyday conversation since the end of October, along initially with Saturn. If you have found just connections with people in your everyday world, or even technology, there has been some glitches or failures from then until now, wouldn't be a complete surprise. Neptune going direct can help, but Mars is in a part of your chart very much to do with the subconscious. And Mars has a tendency, when it's in the 12th house, to trigger things that are dormant, that we're not so aware of. Sometimes things that are to do with past disappointments, upsets, separations and unhappinesses. And because Mars is going to be clashing first with the restrictive Saturn and then with Neptune as this week goes on, and also the quarter moon is going to amplify any sensitivities. That's on Thursday in your sister Earth sign of Virgo. Maybe something that is to do with a delicate matter or issue that has been pushed to one side could come back into view, and in some ways feel that much bigger and more profound. If there is someone around you that you're not quite sure of, someone you're connected to on social media, this is not the best of weeks to be too open about confidential matters or things that you feel a bit unsure or vulnerable about. So everyday communication, we all have lots of it, particularly through technology, can be very fast. But this is a week when things that are not quite so obvious can just seem to come into the open. So if there is someone around you, for example, who you know can be a little bit loose, if you tell them something, it maybe gets shared with other people. So keep a confidence very tight to your chest. But as Mercury returns back into your 12th house on Friday, could see you thinking very deeply about the whole issue of your beliefs, the people you connect to regularly, and the value of people in your world who are truly trustworthy and sincere. Because if there are any fair weather friends, whether it is through those last minute changes of plan which could prove frustrating, or something more to do with a lack of loyalty or trust, it could come up this week as the week goes on. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. Aquarius, your week beginning the 8th of December forecast still has the posse of players in Sagittarius, Venus about charm and diplomacy, the Sun about your purpose, and Mars about your desire. So that 11th house is terrific for the social world that often plays out in the run-up to Christmas. But Mercury is in a part of your chart as the week begins, which is much more to do with your aspirations, your long-term planning around work. And it's in a challenging opposition with your modern ruler of Uranus. And you may find yourself feeling a little frustrated or wired up if your long-term hope isn't going quite as you would like. And to be honest, for all of us this week, progress can be slowed because Saturn, your traditional ruler, is providing a handbrake to the thrust of Mars in that part of your chart that is to do with making things happen. We also have a quarter moon in the sign of Virgo, which is your longer term financial or shared financial planet, and that's clashing with the sun in that 11th house. So your natural idealism, friendliness, and ability to work as part of a team is in some ways challenged by a little bit of life's reality. That reality comes in three slices: the quarter moon, but also Saturn being very resistant to the charms of Mars, but also Neptune. Now Neptune ends a retrograde, which began on the 4th of July, but has been in your sector of money since the end of October. And things have been moving at a turgid pace when it comes to income or being more entrepreneurial. Perhaps generally over the last couple of years, it really wouldn't be a surprise, but it's probably given you the opportunity with Saturn in your second house to refine your approach, to release what's no longer serving your greater good, and to simplify things down, to concentrate on what's really important to you. But even then, you may encounter people who don't work the same way as you, don't have your values, and that can be disappointing. But Mercury does provide some solace as we get to the end of this week, and actually getting together with people you can really rely upon, who really do understand what you're about, and having a little bit of a playful and delightful time as this week draws to a close can be the perfect fill-up. If there have been some frustrations in the week, it doesn't follow you can't still make progress. It may just be a little slower and perhaps not quite meet your expectations. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more. So Pisces, your week beginning the 8th of December is going to see your modern aquatic ruler Neptune go into direct motion on Wednesday. Because apart from the end of March through to the latter part of October this year, Neptune has been with you since full time, since 2012. Neptune can be very empathetic energy, it can be very creative, very imaginative, brilliant for healing, and also for anything to do with the spiritual or psychic dimension too. But the retrograde, along with Saturn's retrograde in your sign, may have seen you a bit dispirited at times, not had quite as much physical vitality. So Neptune going direct is something to savour, but as he does, so Mars, the planet of desire, is soaring higher into the top of your chart, but goes into a direct challenging right angle, first with Saturn in your sign and then with Neptune later this week. So what you're being asked when it comes to your ambitions, your interface with the world at large, anything to do with job applications, career responsibilities, you're being asked to have the maximum amount of self-belief and confidence and assurance just at a time when you could feel quite delicate or not quite feel that you have the available energy to seize the golden prize. And also, because there's an electric, sparky opposition between Uranus and Mercury right through to Friday, your ideas can be buzzing, but if you are needing to collaborate with anyone who's in a more conventional environment, such as a big business, an institution, you may find, if you work in such an environment, that actually you're really questioning whether that's the right place for you to be. That more free-spirited part of your nature being emphasised. Actually, by the end of this week, you can start to make true sense of this. Mercury is actually going to move to join up with the posse in Sagittarius on Friday. and therefore move out of the ninth house, which has been emphasising your more freedom-loving and independent credentials. And there may be a conversation about retraining, applying for a job in a new environment, or perhaps using skills that you've developed over time, but perhaps in a different, more imaginative way. And that can be a breakthrough. And don't underestimate the deep knowledge that you've accumulated over many, many years. And that's being emphasised by Pluto. And Mercury meets Pluto towards the end of this week. However, there is a quarter moon in your sector of relating, and it may be a professional relationship that needs the most care this week. If you try too hard, that might not quite chime. If you're not tuned in enough, that might be noticed. How do you find the balance between how you need to be as an individual and how you're going to be received and seen in terms of your wider interactions? That's going to be the kind of big question of this week. But if you're very clear in terms of goals and ambitions, and you don't have any personal doubts, and you do feel you're up to go for it, this could be a week towards the end of it when you finally have a big breakthrough, and it's a big breakthrough that could prove to be very exciting. So you raise your profile, receive more recognition, and most of all, feel really good about the success that you're generating. Year 2026 racing up. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for next year, you can do so now. Get 30% off, and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person these are produced for. You'll also get your free gift of your Zodiac, General, Love, Chinese and Indian forecast for year 2026. Please see the link below for more.